Something absolutely explosive just happened in British politics, something that's leaving both Westminster insiders and ordinary voters stunned. In a move no one saw coming, King Charles has just handed over a significant platform of influence to Nigel Farage, bypassing the traditional political machinery and igniting a full-blown crisis within the Labour Party. This isn't just ceremonial, it's political dynamite. And at the centre of this storm is a visibly shaken Keir Starmer, who reportedly erupted behind closed doors as this royal move leaked to the press. The monarchy, long seen as neutral and symbolic, appears to have shifted the balance of power in a way that could reshape the future of Britain. What's happening behind palace walls, and why is Nigel Farage suddenly being treated like the man of the moment by none other than the king himself? Strap in, because what you're about to hear will change how you see the entire political landscape. The tension in Westminster is unlike anything seen in years. After months of political stagnation and growing public frustration, King Charles has made a move that's sending shockwaves through the heart of the establishment. Behind the pomp and ceremony of royal engagements, a very different game is being played, a game of quiet influence and strategic positioning. Sources close to Buckingham Palace have confirmed that King Charles, in preparation for his international diplomatic initiatives, has reached out directly to Nigel Farage for counsel on matters of national policy and international standing. Not only that, but Farage has reportedly been invited to several high-level discussions traditionally reserved for senior government officials. This isn't a courtesy nod, it's a signal, a calculated message that Farage, and by extension, Reform UK, is now seen as a legitimate force in shaping Britain's future. This extraordinary development has shattered decades of protocol. The monarchy has always maintained a carefully constructed image of neutrality. Yet here we are, watching the King of the United Kingdom align himself with a figure who has built his entire career on challenging the political elite. For the Labour Party, this move is a nightmare scenario. For years they've tried to paint Farage as a fringe populist, someone outside the bounds of serious politics. But now, with the king himself offering Farage access and influence, that narrative has collapsed. It's no longer possible to ignore him or dismiss his party as irrelevant. The throne has spoken, not with a loud proclamation, but with quiet, deliberate action. Keir Starmer's response has been nothing short of explosive. According to insiders, the Labour leader was blindsided by the news. His team had no warning, no prior knowledge, and no way to spin the story before it hit the press. Reports suggest that Starmer erupted in fury during a closed-door emergency meeting, yelling at advisers and demanding answers. He had spent the last year trying to consolidate control, presenting himself as the stable alternative to Tory chaos and reform disruption. But now the rug has been pulled from under him by a monarch who's supposed to stay out of politics, and who has instead just handed political momentum to his rival. The public reaction has been just as dramatic. Within hours, social media was ablaze with reactions from across the spectrum. Supporters of Farage hailed the king's move as a long-overdue recognition of what they see as the people's voice. Finally, someone who speaks for us is being heard, one tweet read. Critics of the move, however, see it as a dangerous breach of constitutional tradition. This crosses a line. The monarchy is supposed to unify, not divide, posted a prominent Labour MP. But for all the noise, one thing is clear. The political conversation in Britain has changed overnight. The significance of this shift cannot be overstated. In a democracy built on conventions and symbolic power, perception is everything. And by giving Farage a seat at the table, King Charles has effectively legitimised him in a way that elections and opinion polls never could. This isn't just about one meeting or one conversation. It's about altering the hierarchy of political relevance. It's about sending a message that the old guard can no longer control who gets to speak, who gets to lead, and who gets to shape the future of the nation. Starmer, for his part, is now scrambling, already under pressure from within his party. For his lukewarm messaging and inconsistent stances, he's now facing the most unpredictable political challenge of his career. If the king is aligning himself, even subtly, with a challenger like Farage, then Starmer risks being seen as irrelevant, out of touch, or worse, part of the very establishment that the public is turning against. He has no good options. If he attacks the monarchy, he alienates traditionalists. If he stays silent, he looks weak. If he tries to double down on his centrist path, he risks becoming invisible in the rising storm. The ground beneath Labour's feet is crumbling at an alarming pace. What began as whispers of discontent within the party has now erupted into a visible schism, and Reform UK is exploiting every crack with ruthless efficiency. At the heart of this political earthquake lies a single undeniable truth: the traditional two-party dominance in Britain is disintegrating. While Labour continues to project unity on the surface, behind the scenes it is fighting battles on multiple fronts, from ideological splits and voter desertion to internal power struggles that threaten to tear the party apart. Nigel Farage and Richard Tice aren't just gaining traction, they're rewriting the rules of engagement in British politics. And now, with an implicit nod from the monarchy, Reform UK's insurgency has transformed into a full-scale movement. Via Mai. Local elections earlier this year were a stark warning. Reform UK surged in areas once considered Labour strongholds, capitalising on working-class frustration over immigration, housing, NHS backlogs, and economic stagnation. The messaging from Farage was relentless and brutally effective. He painted Labour as elitist, out of touch, and incapable of delivering the change that voters were promised. Starmer's cautious, centrist approach, once praised for its discipline, now appears sterile and uninspiring to a population crying out for bold leadership. Reform UK, once dismissed as a Brexit-era remnant, has rebranded itself as the authentic voice of the people, unfiltered, unapologetic and unrelenting. Adding to Labour's woes is the growing chorus of defections and resignations. Several local councillors have publicly abandoned the party, citing Starmer's failure to address grassroots concerns and his increasing alignment with establishment policies. Even more damning are the reports of Labour MPs holding private discussions with Reform UK figures, a taboo in mainstream politics just a year ago. While these whispers remain unconfirmed, the fact they are being taken seriously at all is a testament to how drastically the political landscape has shifted. Reform's message is resonating not just with voters, but with disillusioned insiders who no longer believe the Labour ship can be steered back on course. Public confidence in Starmer's leadership is also taking a hit. Despite leading in national polls earlier in the year, his numbers have plateaued, and in some key battlegrounds they've declined. Critics argue that his refusal to take bold stances, especially on hot-button issues like immigration, energy policy, and national sovereignty, is eroding his credibility. He appears trapped between appeasing moderate centrists and alienating Labour's traditional base. But in trying to please everyone, he's pleasing no one. Meanwhile, Farage has doubled down on clarity, no matter how controversial his positions may be. That directness is winning over undecided voters, who are tired of political doublespeak. The King's recent gesture toward Farage only adds more fuel to Reform's momentum. It validates the perception that Reform UK is not just a protest vote, but a viable alternative to the political establishment. For Starmer, this development is catastrophic. Every headline linking the monarchy with Farage chips away at Labour's institutional legitimacy. Every public appearance that elevates Reform as a serious national player forces Labour to reckon with the uncomfortable truth that they are no longer the only progressive option for the disenchanted. And for every voter Labour loses to apathy or anger, Reform UK is standing by with open arms and a clear, no-nonsense message. Compounding Labour's difficulties is the growing disillusionment among younger voters. Traditionally, a Labour-leaning demographic, many in this group now view the party as stagnant and uninspiring. Reform UK, cleverly pivoting its messaging, has begun targeting these voters with promises of housing reform, small business support, and free speech protections. While Labour continues to tout its legacy, Reform is speaking to the future, a future framed around independence, identity, and restoring national pride. And in today's media environment, those narratives are winning clicks, shares, and hearts. Labour's Internal leadership has so far failed to respond effectively. Starmer's closest advisers are urging him to stay the course, to project stability in the face of upheaval, but that strategy appears increasingly out of sync with the times. A growing segment of the party's grassroots membership is demanding a shift, either toward more bold left-wing policies or a firmer stance against the rising right. Instead, Starmer continues to occupy a cautious middle ground that's becoming politically untenable. Every refusal to engage with the Reform UK surge is seen as cowardice. Every vague speech is interpreted as evidence of a man out of touch with the storm brewing beneath him. Media coverage is further amplifying this crisis. Traditionally sympathetic outlets are beginning to question Starmer's strategy. Editorials, once filled with cautious optimism, now carry a tone of frustration. Political commentators are openly asking if Labour has peaked too early, and whether Reform UK might achieve what UKIP never could: actual seats in Parliament and a lasting reshaping of the political spectrum. And as Labour reels from every negative headline, Reform is turning its underdog status into a badge of honour. "They fear us because we tell the truth," Farage quipped recently during a packed town hall in Birmingham. The crowd roared, not just with applause, but with the energy of a movement that believes its time has finally come. In Parliament, the mood is no better. Rumblings of a leadership challenge are being whispered once again. Although no serious contender has stepped forward yet, the discontent is palpable. Some Labour MPs worry privately that unless something drastic changes, they could be walking into a general election disaster. Others are growing emboldened by the idea that Starmer is simply the wrong man for this political moment. The King's implicit endorsement of Farage may not be a formal political shift, but in the eyes of many, it's a sign that even the monarchy sees the writing on the wall. This section closes with a chilling realisation for Labour. Reform UK is no longer a fringe protest. It is a national movement, fuelled by rage, hope, and a hunger for change. And as long as Labour remains paralysed by fear and indecision, the rise of Farage and Reform will only accelerate. The King's intervention may have been symbolic, but its consequences are now very real. The dramatic shift unfolding in British politics signals more than a change in party preferences. It represents the crumbling of a decades-old establishment. Labour and the Conservatives, once the twin pillars holding up the British democratic structure, are now staggering under the weight of their own complacency. The rise of Nigel Farage and Reform UK is not just about voter anger or populist rhetoric. It's about a systemic collapse in public trust that has been brewing for years. What we are witnessing is the formation of a new political order, built on the ruins of institutions that once commanded respect, but now evoke only scepticism and resentment. The British public, weary of promises unkept and policies that benefit the elite, are turning their backs on the status quo, and Reform UK has positioned itself as the only genuine alternative with the courage to confront the truth. For years, Britain's political class has operated in an echo chamber, insulated from the harsh realities facing ordinary citizens. Rising energy prices, unaffordable housing, crumbling healthcare, and unchecked immigration have been brushed aside by metropolitan elites who arrogantly assumed voters had nowhere else to go. Labour, under Keir Starmer, adopted a strategy of cautious moderation, aiming to win back centrist voters alienated by the Corbyn years. But in doing so, they alienated their working-class base. Communities that once saw Labour as their champion now see it as an imposter parroting Tory policies. In slightly gentler tones, Reform UK capitalised on this disconnect, using direct language and unapologetic stances to pierce through the political fog and strike a chord with voters tired of being ignored. The King's symbolic gesture, granting audience and indirect recognition to Farage, may go down in history as the tipping point. Though the monarchy is bound by convention to remain politically neutral, this public engagement sends an unmistakable message. The winds of change are being felt at every level of British society. Establishment parties laughed at Farage in the past. They mocked him as a sideshow, a populist provocateur who could never command real power. But now, with cameras flashing and headlines screaming, it is clear that even the highest offices are taking him seriously. The old guard, once smug in their control of the narrative, are now scrambling to catch up. This is no longer just about winning seats, it's about survival. The effect on Parliament has been electric. Backbenchers from both Labour and Conservative, parties are privately voicing alarm. Long-time MPs are now questioning whether they'll even stand for re-election. Many fear a bloodbath at the ballot box, particularly in blue-collar constituencies where Farage's message is being embraced, like gospel. Party whips are reportedly in chaos, struggling to maintain discipline as internal fractures widen. Some MPs have openly defied party leadership by calling for policy shifts to match the public mood. Tougher border controls, massive cuts to foreign aid, and stronger protections for British industries. But these desperate moves are being seen for what they are, panic dressed up as policy. Meanwhile, Farage is operating like a wartime general, strategic, relentless, and unafraid to offend. His town hall events draw massive crowds, his social media presence dwarfs that of his rivals, and his soundbites dominate the news cycle. What truly terrifies the establishment is that Farage isn't just energising the base, he's converting the disillusioned. Voters who had sworn off politics entirely are returning, not because they trust the system, but because they trust him to dismantle it. Reform UK isn't just running a campaign, it's staging a revolution. And in this revolution, every Labour misstep is fuel for the fire. Keir Starmer's inability to adapt is becoming his undoing. His carefully measured speeches, policy role. In the eyes of the British public, however, this international concern only adds to Farage's credibility. Every time foreign leaders express anxiety over his rise, Reform UK frames it as proof that the party is challenging the globalist status. Quote, Farage's supporters cheer each rebuke from abroad, interpreting it as validation that he is fighting the right battle. This populist narrative of Britain versus the world, of ordinary citizens versus elite institutions, is proving extraordinarily powerful. It's a narrative Labour has failed to counter because it doesn't understand it. And that failure could cost them everything. The old political world is crumbling. The King's unprecedented recognition of Farage marks a line in the sand. Reform UK is no longer a fringe voice. It is the voice echoing loudest through the halls of power and into the streets. Labour stands dazed, still reciting the slogans of a bygone era, while the future rushes forward without them. This is not merely an election campaign. It is the birth of a new political reality, one that may soon engulf Westminster in ways no one could have imagined.